Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to the Daily Fantasy Cafe podcast. As you know, I am Big Italy 42, your host. And if you watched yesterday's show with Spencer Limbach and I, we did talk about Russell Westbrook versus DeMarcus Cousins, highlighted that Cousins outscored him last time the two played on the same night. And lo and behold, once again, fortunately for Cousins against the Sixers, he dominated 33 and 17, couple more assists. I mean, he had a tremendous game. Easily outscored Russell Westbrook. It wasn't even close. 20-plus points there. So, DeMarcus Cousins last night was the play to be had. If you had him, he was great. Mr. Consistency, as we labeled him yesterday. And I got a laugh from Spencer on this one and probably from many others. But once again, Ersan Ilyasova had another huge game. Nearly 50 DraftKings points last night with the double-double. So, huge game for him there. Enes Kanter. Like we said, it was pretty much beginning and ending with DeMarcus Cousins, Enes Kanter. Those guys both went off. He had another monster game. In fact, outscored Russell Westbrook last night. So maybe this is a sign of things to come. I mean, you can get him at barely half the price of Russell Westbrook most nights. So Kanter, a great target. But we'll get to that in a few minutes here. I'm going to do DraftKings, FanDuel, both on this podcast and on this huge 13-game slate. I'm going to start things off by saying the $25 slam on FanDuel, the mega slam tonight, $1 million in prizes tonight. First place takes home $100,000. I plan on taking that down, but you can't win if you don't try. So go ahead, get yourself in that big tournament, get yourself a shot at some huge money, because I know 100 grand will change my life. I assume it would do the same for you. So without further ado, I'm going to go game by game on this one today with so many games. It's going to be kind of hard to go through the entire position. Really no point in talking about every single player. So starting things off, Clippers at the New York Knicks. Clippers a monstrous 14.5 point favorite here on the road. I am not playing any being from Columbus, I almost said Columbus Clippers. A little Freudian slip there. Either way, Los Angeles Clippers, any Clippers. I'm not playing any Clippers today. I mean, this game shouldn't be close. Obviously, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, those guys could have huge games. JJ Redick, I mean, they could. I'm not paying to find out on a 13-game slate. Should be an ugly game, especially with Alexei Shved. Once again, questionable. If he doesn't go, I don't mind going with a Langston Galloway or a Shane Larkin there at point guard. But aside from that, this game is an easy avoid. Move on for me. Next game on the docket, Atlanta at Orlando. And this game, once again, a little bit of concern here with a potential blowout. I mean, you've got Atlanta here listed as a pretty solid favorite here, 7.5 points at home. Not quite the double digits, obviously, that the Clippers are, but I'm not really too worried about the risk here, especially because Tobias Harris still listed as game time decision, but looks like he's on the right side of questionable, so looks like he'll probably play. I like to think they may be able to keep this one close. I think there's some targets. Obviously, Elfrid Payton, a guy, huge upside, but you don't love the matchup. He's getting pretty expensive, too. 73 on FanDuel, 77 on DraftKings. I think he's a fine tournament play, but not a guy I'm going to be going all aboard. But you've got guys like Jeff Teague sitting at 64 and 62 FanDuel DraftKings. He's an interesting play, but we've seen before with the Hawks, none of the guys getting a ton of minutes. So this, once again, is a game that I'm not investing heavily in. I do still like Damari Carroll. Big fan of Damari Carroll, as usual. It's a nice cash game play. Doesn't have huge upside, but he did show some 230-point fantasy point performances in his last 4 games. And $5,700 on FanDuel and $5,800 on DraftKings today. Not a bad price for him. Outside of that, I'm not going crazy with this game. If you're looking at tournaments, you've got guys like Nikola Vucevic, Bucci Mane, who is cheap right now, but also seeing low 30s, high 20s in minutes. Just not a great situation. It is a tough matchup against Atlanta. Does have a little bit of a size advantage down low, but really not going too much into that one. Next up, Indiana at Washington. And this one's interesting. It's supposed to be a close game. You've got a very close spread here with a 2-point spread for Washington here. So small favorite for them. I do like this game as a potential target, but both teams top 10 in defense. So not a game that you're going to want to go heavily into with the low total, but at the same time, you do have a close game, close spread. You can look at guys like Roy Hibbert, who's really cheap still. I'm obviously not going crazy with him on a huge slate, but he is playing really great basketball right now. So if you want a cheap guy at center. I don't mind him tonight. He's got 33, 26, and 35 fantasy points his last 3 games on FanDuel. Not an ideal matchup against Marcin Gortat, who's also in play, but more of a tournament guy for me. And elsewhere, you've got Rodney Stuckey, who did not practice yesterday. He's questionable for tonight. If he sits out again, you're going to look at more bumps for guys like CJ Miles, Solomon Hill. Those guys are in play. But really the guys you're targeting here are going to be the point guards. You've got John Wall sitting at $9,500 on FanDuel, $8,600. Another discount, another price drop from DraftKings there for him. Like him quite a bit. George Hill at $7,071. A little bit pricey, but kind of know what you're going to get from him. And I think this one's going to be more of a point guard battle. So I don't blame you for looking into this one. Brooklyn at Charlotte is going to be an interesting one. You've got no point spread as of this morning. I'm looking at this early in the morning. Let me refresh and double check here. Actually, a 3-point spread now. Charlotte favored, 196.5 point total. So not an ideal total, but you do like to target the close games, and this one should be just that. Kemba Walker playing some great basketball right now. $7,600 on FanDuel, and over on DraftKings, he's got a nice price once again. I mean, he's sitting there just near that same price at $7,200. Not quite the discount we got last time out, but Kemba definitely a play for me. Darren Williams, Jarrett Jack, whoever's playing at point guard, really not concerned with him. None of them are good defenders. I do like Kemba Walker a great deal tonight, so I think he's certainly in play. Other targets you've got here, I'm not looking at Mo Williams. His price is too much for me. Joe Johnson, too inconsistent. No thanks there. If you're looking down at power forward, Thaddeus Young playing great basketball right now. Obviously not an ideal matchup down low, but he's playing great ball. He's got 37 minutes in his last game, 27 the game before that, but that was coming after a 53-minute performance in that triple overtime game against Milwaukee. So you do like the size here. Al Jefferson could miss this game. He injured his right knee, had some soreness after the last game. So if he misses, I will be all aboard the Brook Lopez train again as well. Much better price on DraftKings, sitting at $7,000, $78 on FanDuel. A little bit pricey for him, but if there's no Al Jefferson down there, this team is going to eat down low, as they have recently. So that would definitely put him in play for me. Next up, we've got Chicago at Toronto. And this one is another close game. Chicago, 1-point favorite, 199.5 point total. Bulls fans rejoicing at the fact that Jimmy Butler is back. And boy, was he ever back. He had himself a nice game. Not a tremendous game, but back to being Jimmy minutes. 40 minutes in his first game back. 19-9 with 1 assist. 30 fantasy points. Not a ton of upside at his price at $8,500 and $8,000 on DraftKings. But a guy you can look at in your cash games. He's pretty much got a floor right around there at 30 points. Kyle Lowry looks like he came back too soon. Roto World was saying it was Kyle Lowry's false start. And it seems about right. I mean, he came back too soon. Left with an injury again last night. I was one of the people who took a chance on him in a couple tournaments because he was cheap on DraftKings with $7,200. I mean, he was 2% owned in the $27 crossover. So he was calculated risk. Obviously didn't pay out. Doesn't look like he's going to play tonight, which means Grievous Vasquez sitting at $3,900 on FanDuel. A tremendous price for him. $4,300 on DraftKings. He's in play. Also, as we know, if Lowry sits, DeRozan gets a bump and vice versa. So DeMar DeRozan becomes a great play at shooting guard tonight. $7,600 on FanDuel, $77 on DraftKings. Like I said, close game, target you're going to be looking at. And Lou Williams, sweet Lou, hasn't really shown a ton of upside recently, but he is getting minutes, especially if Kyle Lowry can't go tonight. Sitting at $4,700 FanDuel, $46 on DraftKings. I like him as a tournament play. He does have significant upside if he gets it going. So we'll see what happens as the day moves on, but I'm not anticipating that Kyle Lowry plays tonight. Not really looking at Mike Dunleavy. He's got upside. We'll see how that goes. Joakim Noah, after general soreness, kept him out of the last game. Expected to play tonight. Seems like Tibbs is expecting him to suit up and play in this one. We'll see. He kind of has a minutes limit. Looks like right around 32 minutes anyway. So guys like Pau Gasol, Nikola Mirotic get a little bump down if he does go. And their prices are getting up there. I mean, you've got Mirotic sitting at $7,600 and $73. Gasol at $92 and $87. So pretty pricey there. Obviously, Taj Gibson back too, so less minutes to go around. And he played 32 minutes in his last game, just 18 fantasy points. Really hasn't been a good point per minute producer this season. So you don't mind the matchup tonight, but I'm really not actively targeting Taj Gibson. I think that Gasol and Mirotic are fine plays tonight, but definitely give them bumps if Joakim Noah is not able to go. Next up, we have Miami at Boston. And this one's going to be yet another close game. Miami, a 5-point underdog in this one, 201.5 point total. And it's looking like Hassan Whiteside, who cut his hand last night's game, is not likely to play tonight. He's technically listed as questionable. Doesn't look to me like he's going to go. If you want a really cheap play for here, I guess you're going to see more minutes from Chris Anderson. Not much upside, especially on a 13-game slate, so really not a target I'm looking at. What it does tell me is that there's going to be even more to be had for Goran Dragic and Dwayne Wade. And Dragic last night, 29 fantasy points in 40 minutes, not his best performance. But Dwayne Wade, 30 fantasy points in 31 minutes. So you got to think there's going to be more for these guys. Boston, one of the worst defensive teams in the league, giving up the fourth most points. So both those guys in play. Also, on the other side of the ball, Isaiah Thomas expected back for tonight, listed as probable. That means Evan Turner, especially with his huge price increase at shooting guard on FanDuel, up to 7,100, out of play for me completely. You could look at him at 5,900 on DraftKings if you wanted, but really, really risky play, especially with Isaiah Thomas back. And, you know, if you're looking at Isaiah Thomas, sitting at $7,300 on FanDuel, way too much for me on the first game back. 6,000 on DraftKings, I may be able to stomach, assuming that he's not on a minutes limit. Got baseball in the mind already with this, all the nonsense been going on in the NBA. But either way, if he's not on a minutes limit, I consider him on DraftKings, not playing him on FanDuel. Too pricey for me there. Really not investing in any of these other guys. I mean, just too risky, most of these players. You can look at Brandon Bass. Seems like he's got a nice safe floor right around 25 fantasy points most nights. He's at 5,500 on FanDuel and 53 on DraftKings. He's an okay play, but not going out of my way to play him. Houston at New Orleans, our next one up. And this one's more like a 203-point total. Houston, a 1.5-point favorite here. And we've got some injury concerns here. But Dwight Howard, after missing 2 months, expected to play tonight. 7,900 on FanDuel, 75 on DraftKings. Not a chance in hell I am playing him tonight at that price. I assume he's going to see limited minutes. And James Harden said he's not changing anything he's doing with Dwight Howard coming back. So looks like James Harden could be the same old huge upside guy, big usage. We'll see how many minutes Howard gets. That's going to be a wait and see for me. Obviously, Terrence Jones still out with that partially collapsed lung. So there's going to be more minutes to go around for guys like Donatas Motiejunas. And you've got Josh Smith, once again, probable. He was questionable for last game, played there. I'm not really concerned. But, I mean, your obvious targets here, you've got James Harden and Anthony Davis, two of the best players in the game, in the world even. I mean, you got Anthony Davis at $12,400 on FanDuel. It's an insanely high price. But $11,200 on DraftKings, a little more feasible price there. I mean, he's got significant upside. Houston can't rebound. Obviously, Dwight Howard can. We'll see once again with him. Really a lot of uncertainty there. But I do like Anthony Davis if you can fit him in. You got to like James Harden if you can get him in. Sitting at 11.5 and 11.5 on both sites. So he's certainly in play. Patrick Beverley looks like he's going to be out for a while. So with that being said, you could definitely look at James Harden getting a little bit of a bump. I'm not buying into the Jason Terry or Pablo Prigioni. Maybe Jason Terry in a single bullet, but like I said, there's 13-game slate tonight. 26 teams are playing. I don't need to be playing a 75-year-old journeyman in my lineups tonight. Tyreek Evans, another interesting play. He's questionable for tonight. So if he does end up sitting, obviously that means more usage for Anthony Davis. That means Norris Cole gets a little bit more run. He doesn't have a whole lot of upside, but he should get you right around 20, maybe 25 fantasy points. I think he's a fine punt if you wanted to go that route. Next up, Lakers at Minnesota, and due to the lack of defense, there is a ton of fantasy goodness in this one. I do like it a great deal. You've got a nice 202-point spread, 1.5-point favorite for Minnesota. So they'll be happy to be the favorites in this one over a Lakers team that actually wasn't terrible last time. And they put up a fight for much of that game against OKC. You know, put up over 110 points. I believe it was 114. So Jordan Clarkson was the story last night. Everybody on Jeremy Lin. I said I wasn't a huge fan of him. He did pay off his tag, right around 30 fantasy points. But Jordan Clarkson, wish I could say I had encouraged him yesterday. I didn't. 50 fantasy points, career high 30 real points. He's sitting at 5,700 tonight on FanDuel, $5,100 on DraftKings. I don't mind him. I think he may end up being higher owned than you'd like him to be on this big slate due to that explosion last game. But seeing the Lakers definitely try some new things with their lineup, being young, being way, way out of contention. And, you like to think Clarkson's probably going to get some runs. So I think he's a fine play. Everybody in the world for Minnesota, once again questionable. So if you want to go with a cheap punt, you've got Zach LaVine listed at 51 on both sites. Playing big minutes. He's got a low floor, but he's also got a high ceiling. He's got a big usage rate. So I think he's a fine play, assuming that Rubio sits. Kevin Martin, already talked about him. Not going to go into that anymore. Questionable for tonight. I'm not going too crazy into any of these Minnesota veterans. So obviously you anticipate Kevin Martin's going to play. He had a hamstring issue supposedly last game. Ended up sitting, late scratch. I'm not going too much into that. You've got guys like Chase Budinger who been picking up the slack, playing big minutes recently. I think he's a fine play tonight, sitting at $4,700 on FanDuel, 41 on DraftKings, an even better play there. Andrew Wiggins, a guy you can definitely consider. Hasn't shown a lot of upside recently, but 6,063 on DraftKings, 33 fantasy points last time out against Utah, but that was in 49 minutes of play. So the last 2 times he's reached 30, actually last 3 times he's reached 30, was in 40-plus minutes. So, he's getting minutes, yes, but he's not extremely productive right now. So I think he's an okay play, but not a guy I'm forcing into my lineups. You can look at a guy like Mr. Confusion. Ed Davis, last night, made all 5 of his shots, 12 points, 3 rebounds, a block, and a steal in 16 minutes. And he still only saw 16 minutes. So, not exactly sure what to expect here out of Ed Davis. Really just inconsistent minutes. He's been tremendously productive for the minutes he's gotten. At 6,000 on FanDuel, he's way too much anyway. 47 on DraftKings. You could consider him in a tournament, but once again, huge slate. I don't think he's necessary because he's not guaranteed to get those big minutes. He's not guaranteed to even get 20, despite playing well. So really, really risky play there. If Kevin Garnett sits, Adrian Payne, another punt play, sitting at 43 and 39 on FanDuel or on DraftKings. Tarek Black, $3,900 on FanDuel, 38 on DraftKings. Been playing big minutes, upper 20s, played 30 against Utah, and he's been fairly productive, 24 fantasy points last night. I don't mind him as a punt against a weak Minnesota front court. You really don't have a lot of options down there. See, Carlos Boozer is an option, but didn't even play last night, and he said he's going to be sitting out for the next 4 to 5 games per Byron Scott. So Jordan Hill may be sitting as well. Should be more minutes to go around. I would love for those minutes to be going to Ed Davis, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. So Hill, Boozer, both expect to be sitting. Going to be more minutes to go around. I like Tarek Black as a cheap play. And at center, once again, whole bunch of confusion for Minnesota. You got Gorgie Jang, who should get the start with Nikola Pekovic out once again. At least we have some official news on Pekovic. He's not going to play tonight. And Justin Hamilton, questionable with a head injury, concussion, migraine. Not sure exactly what it is. Not a guy I'll be rostering. Not taking that chance. I've already gotten burned by him before. No thanks for me. Moving on next. Cleveland at Memphis. 1.5 point favorite for the Cavaliers. 194.5 point total. And this one's interesting because you've got some top options. Obviously, you've got LeBron James coming off a really big game against Milwaukee, but tough matchup. $11,100 tonight on FanDuel. Pretty pricey. Looking over on DraftKings, he's at 10-1. Much, much easier to stomach there. Don't think I'll be playing him on FanDuel in this tough matchup, despite his upside. I'm really just not forcing a lot of expensive guys into my lineup, so I might go with more of a balance with a ton of options today. You've got guys like Mike Conley you could look at, but he's been inconsistent. Cavs are playing pretty good defense. So for me, no surprise here if you've been watching these podcasts. I'm looking at Tony Allen. I was looking at him before. I like Tony Allen, sitting at $5,100 on FanDuel, 53 on DraftKings. Courtney Lee has sat out the last 2 games. Questionable for tonight. If he sits, obviously another bump for Tony Allen. Gotta love that. I like Tony Allen either way. going to probably see some time on LeBron James, probably a significant amount of time on LeBron James tonight. So Tony Allen, once again, makes for a great play. His price is getting up there a little bit, but it's not getting to an unplayable level yet. I still like him. And if you want a tournament guy, I like Zach Randolph, sitting at $8,000 on FanDuel. And are you surprised by this? Discount on DraftKings, $7,300. So Zach Randolph against the defense of Kevin Love, if you'd like to call it that. Not a good defender, as we know. Zach Randolph, a guy I like quite a bit tonight, and really not touching any of the big men down low on either side here. Philadelphia at Denver is our next game up. And this one's an interesting game, but if you thought Denver would be a double-digit spread, the second biggest favorite on the night, I mean, it's not that surprising if you really think about it, especially with Philly coming off a tough game last night, but 209-point total, definitely what we're looking for. 11.5-point favorite for Denver. This is another instance of some enormous price increases. Danilo Gallinari, coming off a career game, 40 real points, 63 fantasy points last game, has sat out 2 of his last 4 games. Keep that in mind. $7,700 tonight on FanDuel. Not a chance I'll be playing him at that price. Potential blowout. Maybe he doesn't even play. Who knows if they sit him. They've been sitting a lot of guys recently. So, not a chance I'm willing to take. $6,100 on DraftKings. If we know for sure he's in, don't mind that price. Elsewhere, you're looking at guys like Ish Smith. Ish Smith been playing pretty well recently, getting right around 30 minutes. Got a floor of 25, roughly, fantasy points. Not a ton of upside, 30 to 35, but I think he's an okay play tonight. You've got guys like Ty Lawson. Once again, concerned with him. Inconsistency, maybe he sits, maybe he doesn't sit. Randy Foye's the guy that I'm looking at in this one. $4,800. He should be available, they're listing right now. He had the flu, supposed to be back tonight. $4,800, on both sides, $4,800. He was getting big minutes. Had the down game against Miami, but before that, 3 big games in a row. Assuming he's in the lineup and starts tonight, like him a great deal. Will Barton, $5,500 on FanDuel, out of price for me. 43 on DraftKings. I don't mind him in this matchup. He gets an extra run against this Philly team late, especially if he gets out of hand. So I don't mind him. If you're looking on the Philly side, I mean, there's really only one guy I really like. Nerlens Noel. I don't need to tell you what he's been doing. The guy's having a tremendous season. $7,600 on FanDuel, $78 on DraftKings. Denver front court been an easy target for years. Still going to be an easy target tonight. Tomorrow, every other night that Denver plays until they do something about it. Nerlens Noel, the obvious play there for Philly. If you're looking at Kenneth Faried, did have a bad game last time out, but I'm not jumping off the bandwagon just yet. 7,000 FanDuel, 74 on DraftKings. Think he's a fine option tonight as well. And if you're looking for a cheap guy with upside, he was 2.5% owned in a lot of tournaments. I had him in last time out. Doesn't play a lot of minutes, does foul a lot. Yusuf Nurkic, 26 and 24 FanDuel points his last 2 games, sitting at 48 and 4,200 tonight. I think he's in a fine punt play at center if you want to go cheap tonight. Next up, Portland at Utah. And this one's interesting. Just 183.5 point total. 4.5 point favorite for Utah. So you may know where I'm going with this one. And it's not much. You've got guys like LaMarcus Aldridge, Nicholas Batum, both questionable for tonight. Gordon Hayward, Rodney Hood, both doubtful for tonight. So I'm not investing a ton in this game. You've got a really good defense over there in Utah. Really, Gordon Hayward was the weak link. Now he's unlikely to play tonight. If Aldridge and Batum both sit once again, I'm definitely looking at Damian Lillard at $7,600 on DraftKings. Fine price for him there. 87 on FanDuel. Kind of pricey tonight. But, I mean, when you consider who he's going up against, I think he will be a fine play. You can also look at a guy like C.J. McCollum. Kind of exploded last night. 29 minutes, 23 real points, 31 fantasy points. But keep in mind, he's very scoring dependent. And he's not running a lot of backup point guard, as Mike Gallagher had pointed out. He's running a lot of time at the 2. So he's a great play at $3,500, I think, assuming those guys are still sitting out. He's listed at shooting guard on FanDuel, which is great. But point guard on DraftKings, which you don't like as much. Also the same price, $3,500. I'm not playing Aaron Aflalo today. I will probably not be playing Aaron Aflalo again this season. He has been the least productive guy getting big minutes that I've probably seen all season, outside of Kyle Singler. So, Aaron Aflalo, the new Kyle Singler. No thanks today. No thanks forever. Get it together, Aaron, if you want to make my DFS rosters. No thanks. Darrell Wright had a fine game. but only played 21 minutes. No thanks for me tonight. I'll be passing. I like guys with more minutes, especially on a big slate. You can look at guys like Derek Favors, assuming Aldridge is out. He should have himself a very nice game down low against a weak front court. You can look at Rudy Gobert in a tournament, and you could look at Robin Lopez if you'd like, but really low floor for him right now. Not something I'm investing in too heavily. Next up, Oklahoma City at San Antonio. And this game, most years, going to be a doozy. This year, let's hope. I mean, Russell Westbrook been keeping his team in every game. Oh, wait, or is it Enes Kanter? I'm not sure, but that dastardly duo, those two guys playing tremendous basketball right now. Spurs coming off tough loss last night to Dallas. Saw Tim Duncan get limited minutes. Now, an 8-point favorite, 214.5-point total. That's what I'm talking about for tonight. I don't need to tell you this. Play Enes Kanter. I played him last night. Been playing him every day since his explosion, and he has not disappointed. He's putting up monster lines right now. Spurs can't contain big men. Thiago Splitter, not a good defender. Aaron Baines, doesn't matter who they throw at him. Just not good defenders, and I'm just not interested. So Enes Kanter is going to have his way down low. Enes Kanter, my number one dollar for dollar center once again. Get yourself some Enes Kanter. I'm going to say his name one more time. Enes Kanter. Also, Russell Westbrook here. Tony Parker is no match for this man. But at his current price, it's going to be really tough for him to return much value on a 13-game slate. Obviously, if you pay for him tonight and he has one of those 80-point performances against the Spurs, which is certainly possible, Spurs without a legitimate rim protector right now, and obviously, like I said, Tony Parker, not a good defender. Maybe Kawhi Leonard sees some time on Russell Westbrook, one of the better defenders in the league, but Russell Westbrook is just an absolute freak of nature. So, hate to say it, but I will have very little Russell Westbrook tonight. Not that I think he's in a bad spot, but there are 25 other starting point guards to choose from tonight. And obviously, they're not all in play for me, but he is significantly priced higher than every single one of them. And we're talking by a huge margin. $3,300 more than Chris Paul on DraftKings and $2,500 more than him on FanDuel. Just take that into consideration when making your lineups tonight. Not saying fade Westbrook. I'm just saying there's other options I'd prefer. But like I said, he's one of only two players, like last night, hint, hint, that have enormous upside. So it's a tough spot for him tonight. Not matchup-wise, but with just salary-wise. So not touching Tony Parker against him. He's going to get eaten alive. No thanks. If you're looking on the Spurs side, really hard to predict what's going on. The only guy you can really rely on is Kawhi Leonard. $8,500 on FanDuel and $8,100 on DraftKings. Love him tonight. Think he's going to have himself a huge game. And you consider who he's going to be facing at small forward. Maybe Kyle Singler. Good luck with that, OKC. So it's going to be it looks like it's going to be Russell Westbrook versus Kawhi Leonard tonight. And maybe some others will join the party. But, I mean, it's really hard to predict on the Spurs end. Boris Diaw played 29 minutes last night, just 11 fantasy points. Maybe Duncan sees some extra run against Steven Adams and company. Only played 24 minutes last game. I mean, we'll see. But for me, Enes Kanter, Kawhi Leonard, top plays for me in this one. Last game on the slate, Sacramento at Phoenix. This is another enticing one. Phoenix an 8-point favorite, 212.5-point total. And I don't need to tell you that DeMarcus Cousins is an absolute monster down low. Obviously, his two biggest games recently came against Philly and Philly, but tremendous floor, right around 38 to 40 fantasy points. Near mortal lock for a double-double bonus. $10,700 on FanDuel. And on DraftKings, drumroll, $9,600 still on DraftKings. DraftKings must just be really generous right now. They're helping us out. Spencer and I said it last time. We said it again last night. This isn't quite a must-play situation for him. But, I mean, he's still by far the top center option. He and Enes Kanter, I'll probably put those two guys together in a few lineups again, like I did last night. And if you did that, I mean, that was almost 130 points from the two guys last night. Just those two. And you're talking about right around $17,000. So, absolutely ridiculous upside with these two guys. DeMarcus Cousins going up against the likes of Alex Lynn and Brandon Wright. Not great, not bad defenders, I'd say. But, I mean, DeMarcus Cousins, like we know, he's matchup proof. So, you really, really worry about foul trouble, especially with Alex Lynn, who's had those issues before. So, I love DeMarcus Cousins on DraftKings. I'll still get some exposure on FanDuel as well. Elsewhere here, assuming that Brandon Knight is unable to go and he's questionable for the game tonight, seems like he could suit up tonight, which could hurt some guys like Marcus Morris, but I think all it's going to do is maybe take some minutes away from him. I still love Marcus Morris tonight. $5,500. Call me crazy. He's $5,500 on both sites. He's just playing so damn consistently, so well. I absolutely love him as a punt play tonight. I still think he'll probably see 30 minutes. I mean, it remains to be seen, but that's a risk I'm willing to take as well as he's playing. You've got Eric Bledsoe now in a good spot, and he's finally producing. I mean, 3 of his last 4 games, 43 or more fantasy points. Got enormous upside at that shooting guard position. Some other guys you obviously like as well, but Eric Bledsoe you're really looking at tonight. I think he's got the biggest upside of any of these guys on the Phoenix side. Looking over at some other options, you've got PJ Tucker. Nice floor right around 20 to 25 fantasy points. I think he's a fine filler at small forward. And outside of that, I'm not really targeting a whole lot of guys. So, like I said, get yourself in that $1 million tournament on FanDuel. Check out great content we have for this huge slate at dailyfantasycafe.com. I'm at BigItaly42. We can be found at DF Cafe on Twitter. And I'm checking out. I will see you guys again tomorrow.